The main challenge when filming towards a window is balancing the light inside the room with the brightness of outside. The first step is to expose for the uncontrollable. We adjusted our camera settings so that the sky was exposed just under peaking. Now once the camera settings are dialed in, we didn't touch them again. Now you can see how much light we actually need in order to balance this scene. We now want to just add lights until we have the correct levels. And in order to do that, we use the Aperture 600X as our main key light. On the fill side, we actually use a silver bounce. Next, we use the Amaran 200X to blast as much light as we could onto those shadows in the background. The last thing we did was add a backlight, and it got us close enough where I felt like we had enough level that I could correct it in post-production and raise everything up. So remember, always expose for the uncontrollable and adjust your lighting to get the levels you need.